Magic reveals itself to those who remember where to look for it. This is Magic Hour, and I'm your host, Taylor Page. Hello, my loves. Taylor Page here.
And I'm Claire, your producer. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm really excited for our topic today because I feel like past lives and quantum hypnosis therapy, like past life regressions, it's such an interesting topic and so many people want to know about it. And I firmly believe in past lives. I feel like I've had so much evidence of past lifetimes in my own life. And I know that the whole idea of past life healing and ancestral healing work together in a really integrated way. And I get this feeling that like sometimes based on past lifetimes, we pick the ancestral healing that fits into the vein of the cycles that we're breaking. So I don't think it's ancestral versus past life. I think it's past life and ancestral when it comes to soul healing.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I think it's such an interesting, exciting topic. And I feel like I've been almost like naturally opening up more and more to it as like little pings or little things kind of come into my life that feel like little remembrances from the past. And my roommate and bestie, Mandy, and I often talk about how we feel like we have existed together in different formations of unions over time. And we did this like online reading once years ago where it was like, what are you? Like, what archetype are you? And we had always laughed that we were like, I feel like we were like a king and queen in a past life, or we were like lovers in a past life. And she pulled the king card and I pulled the queen card. And we were just dying because we were like, it's proof. Like, we definitely have been on this journey for many iterations. I believe it for sure.
I believe it too. And I also don't believe in accidents. And I think some people are just drawn to a certain time period or a certain region. Like when I was in Rome with my family, I had full body feelings of being there before. I felt lit up there. I felt like alive there. I felt soul remembrance there. Like, it's so interesting how people, places, ideas, time periods, they all spark something within us. And it's funny because I think in a lot of my lifetimes, I've been a man, which is really funny because in this lifetime, I'm so dedicated to like divine feminine healing and this and that. And I feel like sometimes our egos can get involved with past lifetimes. It's like, I was Joan of Arc in my past lifetime, but it's like, no, maybe you were just like a Japanese businessman that needed to learn a lesson about surrender. Like, you know, sometimes our past lifetimes are arbitrary, but that doesn't mean that they're arbitrary to our soul.
I also think about it in terms of our like fears and phobias. Like, for instance, I have a lot of triggers around like creepy crawlers, like snakes and bugs. And my thing with them is I am not afraid of being bitten by a poisonous snake at all. I am afraid of a snake like wrapping itself on me, like the feeling of the snake being on me and being almost like trapped by it. And so I wonder, like, was I like thrown in a ditch and like had a bunch of creepy crawlies like crawling all over me as I died in one of my past lives or something? And, you know, I have a friend who's like so afraid of the water and she's like, I swear I drowned in a past life, like for sure. And I don't have that reaction with water. Like water lights me up. So yeah, I almost wonder if those are like almost like callbacks to the past that we've had, of like why we have those certain like fears or even desires or feel drawn to certain things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel that too. And as you were talking, I was like, I wonder if you had a life in the Amazon with all the creepy crawlies and you had like to fear for snakes or wonder when you were going to wake up, what was going to be near your head or something. It's really fascinating because I've had a weird aversion to fire. So I used to light a candle during all of my angel readings. And after them, even if I knew I blew out the candle, I would have this obsessive vision and thinking of my office burning down, that I forgot to blow out the candle. It would become paralyzing. One time I was in LA, I had a reading and I literally said out loud to myself, I blew out the candle. I got all the way home to Ojai and I was so paranoid that I didn't blow out the candle that I drove back to check. And of course it was blown out. So get this, so my mom had already passed and I was telling my aunt this story and she said, your mom was so afraid of candles growing up that I had to light her candles for her and she was always scared of the house burning down. And so I think I had a life with my mom where we like died in a fire or something because she and I are both so weird about candles and smoke and not blowing things out, and it like became a hyper fixation for me.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of makes sense because then other people will have a totally different relationship to fire. Like they'll be excited by it or want to be like one of those fire spinners or, like fire swallowers or whatever those are called. So I always wonder about that if those things are part of like almost like a recollection of this other version of us. And also the things that we love. Like I grew up in Colorado in a landlocked state, and I swear I lived on an island. I was part of an island nation at some point in the past. Like the feeling I get when I think about those cultures and think about that lifestyle, it feels so me, even though I had no connection to it growing up. And so I also have wondered about that if like, in a past life I was sailing the seas with Moana and like discovering new lands.
Absolutely. I love that. And it's just so interesting as a reader as well because sometimes past life information does come into my readings. And I had a client who was a very successful doctor, and I was telling her, they were showing me, and the past lives that they show me always have to do with what you're currently navigating. It's not arbitrary. Like they aren't just kind of piquing our curiosity. It has to do with the lessons that we're learning in this life. And so I vividly saw her as a homeless man living under a bridge who was really struggling to just survive and get by. And she told me, my biggest fear in this life is being homeless. And that's why I went down this path of becoming a doctor. And I'm so burnt out and I'm so done with this path. But literally, I have this haunting vision every night that I'm a homeless man under a bridge, and I never want that to happen to me again. So I can't believe you just said that. And so I think that it is really interesting when we become conscious of these subconscious driving forces, including past life patterns. And also, when it comes to love life, I see a lot of karmic stuff. Like sometimes I feel like when you meet somebody and there's this instant soul recognition and you feel like you've known them before, but the circumstances are set up logistically for you to not work. The message that I get time and time again is that you guys basically had an agreement to wake each other up or connect with each other or remind each other of who you are or have this like point on the map together, but that the logistical circumstances are that way by design because you're not meant to be together. And I just felt like sharing that because we're in this time with the South Node in Libra, and there's so much South Node rules past lifetimes and who we used to be, and Libra is love and relationships. And there have been so many themes about karmic love life patterns, past life relationships, all of these things. So I'm going to just shamelessly share my Earth Angel Club coming up on September 26th, Libra season. And I decided to make the theme healing karmic relationship patterns with Archangel Camuel, because for so many of us, we are in these karmic relationship patterns that we don't realize. Like, for example, I had a client who's like, I'm doing all the right things to attract my partner. Like I'm creating a life of love. I'm healing myself. I'm in my power. Like I'm a great person. She's a beautiful girl. Like everything. There was no reason. So I tuned in to see what was happening. And basically in a past lifetime, she had this awful husband and she promised, I will never have a husband again. I will be free. I will enjoy my life. And I said, my love, you don't realize the life you have now is the one you prayed for when you were in an abusive marriage. This life you have of following your joy, being free, having friends, not having to check in with someone or have someone controlling you or hurting you or dimming your light is what you actually prayed for. And so in this Earth Angel Club, what we're going to do is sort of review our karmic contracts, do a guided meditation where we make sure that they're up to date with what we want from this consciousness in this lifetime from a healed place. So if you're interested, and if you don't know what Earth Angel Club is, it's a monthly meeting of basically beautiful people from around the world. And I give an astrology update. I tell you what the stars are doing. I tap into the energy of the group and I give an energy update for the collective. And then I lead us through a guided meditation. And that's going to be the healing karmic relationship patterns. And it can be love life, but it can also be other relationship dynamics and patterns. It can be familial because they all trickle and bleed into each other. And then from there, I'll give some ritual suggestions for the month and the Libra energy as well. There are 2 different ticket tiers. One comes with a mini angel reading. Those sell out pretty quickly. And then the other is the general admittance, and there is unlimited tickets. So if you want to join, you can. And code early gives $11 off. And you can find the tickets at angelsandamethyst.com. And any ticket type that you buy also allows you to skip the wait list and get a reading with me. So I hope to see you lovely people there. And the replay is available if you can't make it live.
That's going to be so amazing. I feel that so deeply with a lot of the romantic relationships and also friend relationships. It's like sometimes it just feels so inexplicable or undefinable how we feel connected to someone. It's like, I can't even describe why, but there's just something about you and your energy that draws me in, and it's just kind of undeniable. And I think we have things to learn from those people, even if they're not long-term relationships.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think sometimes we get drawn in or feel that there's a little extra something to the energy, and our mind can try to copy and paste what we want to be true on that sensation. Like, this is my soulmate. I found them. But it's sort of like the same thing with what we can do with angel signs, which it's like, oh, this means yes, green light. But that's not necessarily what the sign is saying. It's just a sign. And then we're assigning our meaning to it. And so I think sometimes these people can come into our lives for so many reasons: to remind us who we are, to wake us up, to make amends, to facilitate some healing, to facilitate a lesson, to just do a million different things. And I think this work is so powerful to get further clarity about it. And I loved my conversation with Nadia because we go into some really interesting and fascinating things. And I just think past life things and karmic connections and soul growth, it's like, it's a topic we could just talk about forever.
Yes, I love it. There's so much to dive into.
There really is. So let me introduce, without further ado, our guest, Nadia Gledhill. Nadia is a passionate QHHT practitioner who enjoys assisting individuals in establishing a connection with their higher self to unlock answers and gain clarity on their life questions. Her mission is to help those who aspire to explore and heal with the transformative power of hypnosis and consciousness expansion. Located in the southeast of Melbourne, Australia, Nadia is known for her quantum healing hypnosis and past life regression meditation workshops. Welcome, Nadia. Nadia, welcome to Magic Hour. So happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. Very happy to be here.
So we always start out the episode by asking you, what is your big 3, your sun, moon, and rising?
Good one. So I'm an Aries sun, a Gemini moon, and a Virgo rising. In the other version of astrology, I forgot what it's called.
Sidereal.
Sidereal, that's it. Yeah, I'm a Pisces sun, still a Gemini moon, and a Leo rising.
Interesting. I myself am a Placidius astrologer, so I'll go with the first one. But it makes a lot of sense to me that you're a Virgo rising, because often those with prominent Virgo placements find themselves in the healing field in one way or another. So I love that.
I didn't know that.
And then Gemini moons are people who can't just do one thing. There's usually very different sides to how you show up, how you express yourself. And I love that as well. And I just have to say, with the North Node in Aries and you being an Aries sun, I'm sure that this last year and a half has been really transformative for you.
Yes, it has.
So the second question that I like to ask is, how does your intuition show up for you? How does your intuition speak to you?
Oh, I like that question. I think for me, it's really an inner knowing. For me, I get a lot. I think it depends on the situation. For me personally, the way it guides me, is that inner knowing. It's that niggle, that gut feeling, that nudge. Sometimes it will pop in almost like a thought. I'll get a couple of words or a sentence that pops in, telling me what to do. Yeah, I would say for me personally, that's how I'm guided. Also, I tend to notice a lot of patterns and a lot of synchronicities. And I feel that that's another way that my intuition or even my guides, which, they're all connected, are trying to communicate with me. But yeah, they're pretty big for me.
I love that. So it sounds like a mix of clairsentience, claircognizance, and clairaudience. And can I ask you, for our listeners who are working on developing their own intuition, you said you get sentences that drop into your head. I just want to ask, are those in second person? Like, you've got this, you can do this, or are they in your own voice? Or have you ever noticed?
Do you know what? I haven't noticed. It's more rather than a you have to, or it's more like, for example, I'll give you an example. It was random stuff. I'm at the supermarket and there was something that I had been looking for, not even supermarket related. And I thought it was something I couldn't buy, but it was an expensive item, right? And I was like, I'm not going to waste money on something like that. But I really wanted it. But I was walking down the supermarket and all of a sudden I just got this sentence that dropped in that said, go down that aisle. And I was like, what's that about? Go down that aisle. And I was like, I don't want to go down that aisle, but I thought, all right, I'll listen to it. And I went down the aisle, and sometimes supermarkets have like just random items, not even supermarket related. They had one of those items there, and it was like marked right down. So I would have paid, let's say, $800 online for this thing, and there I got it for $30. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, picked it up and thank you so much. But that's, yeah. So I don't know. It's not really, I think it's more like go down there or do that as opposed to you or I. That makes sense.
Definitely makes sense. And that is how it works. They drop in solutions that are present moment and solution oriented. And that's how you can tell it's them and not fear, being like, well, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen and that's going to happen. It's like, no, that's fear. And every time intuition drops in, it's calm, it's solution oriented, and it's telling you what to do here and now. So I love, that's a perfect example. So I'm wondering if you can share with our listeners what QHHT is, because I'm so excited to dive into this with you today.
Sure. Well, QHHT stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. It is a technique of regression, and it can incorporate past life regression as well, developed by Dolores Cannon. And a lot of people, I feel, who aren't aware or don't really know much about QHHT have probably more than likely come across Dolores Cannon in their news feeds and bits and pieces. But yeah, it was the technique that she pioneered over many decades of, doing it and refining it. And it was using that technique that she actually, was able to get the information through her clients for her books and her, her knowledge that she accumulated over the decades that she's shared with everyone. So it's a beautiful form of hypnosis, very gentle form, very deep. So it starts with a pre-chat. As a practitioner, we need to know all about the client. And then we go into the regression part, and this is the part, well, the whole actually part I love, but with QHHT, we don't direct someone necessarily to go to a past life. So what we do is we leave the client's subconscious or higher self. So in QHHT, if we ever say subconscious, we're talking about higher self. We use those terms interchangeably. We allow their subconscious to guide them to the most appropriate time and place. And what I love about that is it leaves it open, because as a practitioner, I could guess, but I don't know what's most appropriate for that person. The client certainly doesn't know what's most appropriate for them. They may think they know, but our higher selves always know better. And so, yeah, I allow it to take them to whatever experience they want to take them to. And so for a lot of people, that could be a past life, it could be a parallel life, it could be a life on another planet even. They could go back to a time where they were consciousness, so they don't have a physical body, or they could even go back to scenes in their current lifetime. Anything really is possible. And we explore that, and we gather all the clues that we need. And then from there, we then connect with the client's subconscious or higher self. And for me, that's the best part of the whole regression. So a lot of people, I think, are focused on, what experience am I going to have? What past life did I have? But really, that's the clue gathering part. So the gold is in the next part, which is connecting to the subconscious or directly to the higher self and getting more information for the client. So the client will come in with also questions, things that they want to know in their life, usually around, recurring patterns, life purpose, relationships, all kinds of things. And we delve into those with the higher self and we gain the information that the client needs. And that's where the gold is, really. And then after that, we have a debrief chat. But it's a very, very eye-opening, transformative modality to connect with your higher self. I mean, we're always connected, right? Like everyone is. But some people find that after doing something like this, they're able to recognize that connection much more clearly in their everyday life, because it's always there speaking to us. We don't always listen to it. Yeah, it's a beautiful, just a really beautiful, transformative regression experience.
I love that so much. And there's a couple points that I just want to touch on. One is when you said, I'm not directing the session. It's not like we're going to say, oh, I was Cleopatra in a past life, and like letting our ego lead and being like, I was a queen and I want to see that. It's like, no, opening it up. And me as a medium, we like to say spirit knows best. So I also, in readings, am not trying to force or grasp onto what I think I should be getting. It's like allowing the information for the highest good to come through. So I really love that consciousness with this practice because I couldn't agree more. And if our mind knew what we needed, we wouldn't need these tools. We're opening it up to a higher consciousness. So I really love that. I also was really struck by when you said it could be a past life, it could be a parallel life, it could be a future life. And from my understanding, because somebody was asking me, they were like, how can you have past lives, but also the quantum nature of everything at once? And with my understanding, it's our perception of time in a physical body that is the perception of it being in the past. But in reality, it's all at once. But while we're here in a body, we can conceive of this life in a timeline that would have been years in the past. But there's also the quantum nature of reality, but it's our body making the marker of what's parallel, what's past, what's future. Is that correct?
Yeah. So like with our physical bodies, obviously our physical bodies were in the 3D. So there is time in this dimension. It's a measure that we use in this dimension. But you are correct in that, or at least in my work, that's what I found, is that past lives, current life, future life even, can be happening simultaneously. And that's why we are able to access them. And they appear almost as memories, because in a session like this, when you're essentially expanding your consciousness. And when you do that, you can tap into these other, I want to call them dimensions, whatever you want to call them, but you do get to tap into that quantum field, that field of really, and it's also the field of everything. It's the pure potential. It's everything. And so you're able then to access those, and they look like memories because, I mean, look, having said that, some people receive much more clearer type visionary experiences. Everyone's different. But generally, they're sort of experience more like a memory. They're not as vivid as happening in the 3D world for most people. But yeah, so you're expanding your consciousness into that field, and you're able then to really access the information a lot easier than you otherwise could. But because you're going into that field of pure potential, of course, then anything is possible. So that's why you could go anywhere. I mean, even having experiences where, rather than seeing a life as such or even consciousness as such, you're given symbolic things that come through. I know a lot of, for example, mediums and psychics as well will say, they get symbolic, things that come through. And what does this mean? If I'm seeing this blue ball come through, and you've got to try and interpret that, right? What it means for the client. So that during a QHHT session, that can be very similar for clients as well. Sometimes they can just receive imagery and they don't know what it means. And that's completely okay. They won't know what it means. But when we tap into their subconscious or higher self, I'll ask it what it meant by that. And it always gives an explanation. It'll say, well, I showed them this because of this. This meant this. And it gives them the messages. So yeah, when you expand your mind into that field, anything is possible.
Ooh, that gives me chills hearing that, because as a, psychic medium intuitive, I get a lot of symbols, a lot of imagery, and usually it's accompanied with a knowing of what it means. But to hear the subconscious, the higher self just say, yeah, this is why I was using this symbol and this is this, that puts words to what I experience. And that's so cool. I also really liked what you were saying about giving our higher self a voice. Like it's basically another way of creating sacred space, where when we meditate, when we open ourselves, and then a QHHT session, it's creating sacred space for our higher self to speak. And our higher self is always speaking to us, but it's often us not listening, or it's often overshadowed by our past trauma, our wounds, our attachment to outcomes, and we try so hard to hold on. And I love the element of this sacred container of you being the witness. I think that's a really beautiful added element. Not only are you the guide, but you're the witness to what they say, what their higher self is bringing forward. And I think that's really beautiful. I also found it really interesting, the idea of how everything in the potential has already happened in some way. And I find that, it's while we're in a physical body, I don't think we can fully understand or conceive of things, but it's almost like these bodies ground us into the timeline with the lessons that we want to explore and the consciousness that we want to explore. And I find that sometimes people can get so caught up in trying to humanize this information and make it make sense in a linear way, even though we can never really understand it in a linear way because it's not linear. But I think there's something here about finding the balance of like doing the best with the slice of consciousness that you're embodied into and being powerful and embodied and authentic. But then there's also the medicine in understanding yourself through the context of past lifetimes or future lifetimes. So can you speak to who this medicine is for? Because I feel like sometimes people can go into these things from either an egoic place, or they want to hear they were some great person, or they're avoiding the reality of who they are now. So can you speak to who you recommend this work for, or if it's for everyone, the kind of mindset that can set them up for the highest success?
Yeah, definitely. So I do think it is for everyone. However, having said that, like I said, the mindset and where they are in that space is very important as well. If someone is coming from a place of ego, or let's say curiosity even, absolutely nothing wrong with that. In QHHT, we always say, this is very true, people don't get what they want, they get what they need from a session. And again, because we don't guide it, and the subconscious or high self guides it. So in that sense, it doesn't really matter where someone is on their journey, they'll get what they need. Having said that, also as a practitioner, because obviously we see lots of clients and we can see the differences in the sessions, the most transformative ones would be the ones where people are genuinely, I suppose, stuck, or really looking for answers, and they're very open to what they could be. They may have some preconceived ideas about the answers, but they're not stuck on them or expecting that that should definitely be the answer I think it is. These people are more really just, they're open. They're saying, I want to come and I just want whatever information I need to come through for me. So the more open someone is, the more that they also trust the process and really allow themselves to sink into it, open up, and allow what's going to come through without any filter, without any analyzing of it, just repeating the information to me as they get it. They're the ones that have the most transformative sessions, because, the more they trust, the more they receive. It's just how it works. If they stop trusting and relaying the information, they'll get less that comes through. So they're the ones that are the most transformative. Although having said that, those that come out of curiosity, they still do get information. Would it be as transformative? Not sure. It depends on, I suppose, how open they also are. I would say openness and trusting are big things. And even people, because, our higher selves are subconscious is very powerful. It's that part of us that is, well, it's tapped into everything. It's tapped into the place of knowing. I don't even know if there's a proper word for it. I mean, there would be, but it's different words in different systems and beliefs, but it taps into that place of all knowing. And there's a lot of power there. So a lot of people might come even for emotional healing, even some psychological, like, for example, depression, anxiety, dealing with OCD. I've seen clients with physical ailments that want relief from those, fibromyalgia, knee pain, things like that. The subconscious higher self has the power to heal those if it's appropriate, like if it's not something that serves them in their current lifetime, then the subconscious will remove it for them or alleviate it for them. It's quite amazing how that happens, because it could be stuck energy that's carried over from a previous life that doesn't serve them any purpose, or it could be an energy that is still relevant in this past life, or it could be karmic related. But yeah, we find all that out in a session. But yeah, there's physical elements as well. So many reasons someone could come.
That makes a lot of sense to me, because sometimes physical ailments are messengers trying to get our attention for certain spiritual healing. So it makes sense to me that if the message is received in that sacred space session, that the symptom would go away. So that makes perfect sense. The other thing that you said about trust really resonates with me as well, because, I see 3 clients a day as well for my readings. And it's the people who come in who are open, who are like, I just genuinely trust you in the process, and I want to just know what is for my highest good to hear, that get the most incredible specific evidence and details and messages, because they're allowing it to come through. And what people don't realize is that it's not just me giving a reading. It's you also opening and allowing. And the trust is like an essential alchemical part of the formula. And so I'll never forget, I gave a reading to a family member who is like the most closed-minded person in the entire world. And I literally could not get through. And it's so funny because we are creators and manifestors. And he truly believed, you aren't tapped in, you're not getting anything. And he created that for himself. And I was like, wow, you have these literal, it felt like I was hitting against a steel wall. And I was like, okay, it's not for your highest good or mine for us to be in this space. And so I couldn't agree more. If it resonates with you, even if it resonates with a part of you and there's a part of cynicism or skepticism, that's okay, because that part of you that is a little open will get the messages. But when you're like completely closed, it's really hard to work with you.
Yeah, that's right. And trusting, so trusting what comes through as well for them, because they receive the information, not me. So they receive it, they have to relay it to me because I don't know what they're receiving. So if they don't trust and relay it, it essentially provides me less information to continue guiding them. I can't question their subconscious on that piece of information if I don't know it exists. There's so many things. So trusting and relaying it is so important. And I find that when people do that, when they trust and relay it, it really helps to put that conscious mind aside and opens up that other side that allows that information to come through much more clearly and receive more of it as well.
That's so cool. And the image I get as you're speaking is that this process must jumpstart people's own intuitive practices, because you're guiding them to get their own information. And when they can bring that through and resonate with it and understand that, and has really real shifts in their life, mind, body, soul, what is better than that absolute bomb of self-love and trust from that? I think that might be as equal part of the healing of the process, is seeing how connected you're able to get information and how supported you are.
That's right. It's really empowering for the client because, as I mentioned earlier as well, they can leave the session and they start to understand when it's their higher self or their intuition speaking to them versus their monkey brain or, their egoic side, their human brain interfering in their everyday life. They can start to, even though I think most people understand that sense of knowing or however it comes through for them, that intuition, but people don't always listen because they doubt it. And that's very normal. But understanding or beginning to be able to better recognize when it is that part of us, it allows them to then trust it in their everyday life and make decisions or take action, whatever it may be, based on that intuition that they're getting, that message that they're getting. So yeah, it's quite empowering.
Yeah, it's so empowering. Just any time that you feel supported by a higher consciousness, whether it's our higher self, whether it's our angels and guides, whether it's our past loved ones in spirit, it's like the most empowering, calm, soothing, nervous system regulating feeling. So I put on my Instagram stories that I was interviewing you today, and I got a really interesting question that one of our community members wanted to ask you. And they asked, is there any correlation and I love, by the way, in the beginning, the synchronicity of you saying that you love pattern recognition within the work that you do. I think that's really a perfect gift for you to have. They were asking, is there any correlation between past lifetime wounds or ways that we passed and birthmarks or scars that we have in this lifetime?
Yes. Is it that way 100% of the time? No, but it certainly has cropped up. It certainly has cropped up where someone has, passed away from, let's say, like a stab wound or something like that. And, they'll have a birthmark there. I've also had people with scars that they're not sure how they received them. And they've always known they've had their scar, but they're not sure how they received it. Parents never remembered when it came along. It was just appeared. But they've also been related to past lives. I would say not 100% of the time, but more often than not they are. Yeah, we do find a connection. Yeah.
That is so cool. Just a little personal story. So if you're watching on YouTube or you're familiar with me, I have this like birthmark on my cheek right here, this little mole or beauty mark. And throughout like different readings, I've been told that I was like part of the French noble court, like in the medieval, or not medieval, but maybe like 14 to 1500s. And it's so funny because when you go back and you look at them, they used to draw this mole on exactly right here. So I just think that those little physical markers are so interesting. And I'm so thrilled by your answer because I was really hoping that there was a correlation there. So I want to talk a bit about karmic relationships with different souls that we've done this dance with many times. And there's so much to say about this. Can you speak to soul groups, people learning lessons together, how we might tell if a relationship is karmic, or just anything you feel called to share on this subject?
Yeah, sure. It's actually a really common thing that people want to know about, their karmic and soul contracts. And I tend to say, if you have ever met, and we've all had this, if you've ever met someone and as soon as you meet them, you either feel a pull towards them. So not necessarily in a romantic way, but just you're fascinated by this person. You don't know why. You just want to be around them or know them more, get to know them, just connect with them more. If you feel that pull, and as I said, it doesn't have to be romantic, that's usually a good sign that your souls recognize each other. It's that feeling of, I don't know why, but I just need to be around that person, or I need to know. It's that familiar feeling between the souls that's causing that pull, that connection. But likewise, it can also happen the other way. So if you meet someone and for no logical reason, you're thinking, I don't know why, but I really don't want to be around that person. They haven't done anything. They seem like a nice person. You feel like you don't want to be around them. That could be a sign too, that there's, something or some connection that you've had in a past life even, because, let's say you did not have a good relationship or connection with this person in a past life. Your soul's on a soul level that's recognized. And so whilst you don't know why in this current life you feel that you need to keep your distance from them, on a soul level, it's telling you to do that. So it can go both ways. I think a lot of people tend to think, oh, my soul mate, let's say, or my karmic partner, like they should be always romantic, but it's definitely not the case. It can be from any type of relationship. It could be friends. It could be your neighbor. These are all souls so essentially your soul group is a group of souls who make agreements to help each other learn, because that's what we're here to do in this 3D world on Earth. We're here to learn different lessons and help evolve our soul and grow. And to do that, of course, to learn, you need a teacher. And so there'll be agreements made between souls. Okay, well, you need to learn a lesson on, I don't know, self-love or whatever it could be. I'll play this role, you play that role, and we'll go out and we'll see how it goes. And of course, you know, when we come into this world, you know, we don't remember that we made these agreements. And, you know, there is a reason for that, because if you were to remember, then where's the lesson? You know, it's you'd be given the answers to the lesson, to the test. So, you know, we come out here and we all play out these roles. And I think that's really important for people to understand, because we may have all had, you know, horrible relationships in our lives and friendships and work life, whatever it may be, or people that we've had run-ins with. And it's really important to look back on those situations and realize what the lesson was and learn that lesson, because if you don't, you'll have to just repeat it again. And that's where sort of patterns happen in people's lives. It's the person that says, I always attract this kind of partner. I always, you know, there's always, you know, I'm always getting made redundant from my job. I'm always like, there's these patterns, and it's because they haven't learnt the lesson. And so, you know, if you get to the end of this lifetime and you haven't learnt all your lessons, you're just going to come back and redo all the same lessons again. And no one wants that. So I think recognizing when those relationships happen, and even if they've been negative, looking back and thinking, okay, well, what was the lesson to be learned? And have I actually learnt that? And how can I learn that? Because you don't want, if it's something negative, you don't want to repeat it. I think that's a really important aspect. It's the learning. So you may have these soul groups, soul contracts and karmic contracts, but it's the lessons behind them. So I suppose the difference really between the karmic contracts and soul contracts. So your soul contracts are like your lessons, okay? You know, you're part of the soul group, you're going to teach, you know, I'll teach you this, I'll play this role, you play that role, and we'll play it all out and see how it goes. Your karmic relationships are, well, you're repaying karma to that soul. But what's important to understand is that karma is always repaid in love, or it should be repaid in love.
Oh, I love that.
So, for example, you know, Taylor, if we had a past life and you had murdered me in a past life, now there'd be karma attached to that, but it doesn't mean that I would murder you in this life and we'd be equal. It doesn't work that way. You know, for example, if you took my life, then let's say we reincarnated again, you would have the karmic contract to then take care of me for my life. Does that make sense? So it's, you know, for example, I might be born to you as a high needs child, let's say, and you have to look after me for the rest of my life. Well, that could be a karmic contract, but it's repaid in love. Because if you don't repay karma in love, you don't get off the wheel of karma. You keep going around and around and around. So, you know, karma is not punishment or reward. It's part of the lesson, but you're repaying it in love. That's quite an interesting way to look at different situations in lives as well.
That's so beautiful. I just love that quote that you repay karma in love. And that's so true, because that's how you break the cycle and make a healed choice. I also know that we have a lot of karmic relationships with family members, and I feel like we incarnate into these family groups for a reason, and that you can't escape them. Whereas if it was a lover or a coworker or a friend, you could be like, it's easier to walk away from them than when they're in your family. And especially for children who have either a narcissistic parent or somebody that abandoned them, it's so easy to take it personally and be like, I wasn't enough. I'm not lovable. I'm not good enough. But when you actually realize that it's either a carried over karmic relationship or a lesson for their soul, or it never had to do with who you are in this life, I think that's so healing to pull the veil away and see the deeper history between the souls and realize it's not about me not being enough or not being lovable.
Yeah, that's right. And it's very interesting, you know, giving the example of a child who maybe feels abandoned by their parent. And this is a very hard concept for people to get their head around. Of course, there's different situations, so this won't apply to everyone. There'll be different reasons behind it. But for example, it could be a case that there's a lesson in there and they actually agreed on that. Both of them would have agreed on that before coming here. the two souls might have said, okay, I'll play the parent. I will, let's say, give you up for adoption. And then through that, this is what we're going to learn. And that the souls agree on that, because at a soul level, or when you're not in the human body, there's no other emotion but love. So for them, it's like watching a movie play out. They don't attach any emotion to it when they make these contracts, because they know that no other emotion really exists outside of this 3D world. So at the end of the day, they know that they're all going to return back together, and they're returning to that love. So it's whatever lesson and however they agree to play that out. Maybe that soul needs to learn self-love, and that they're responsible, or it's, on them to love themselves, not to put that on someone else. Or it could be a case of learning more independence. There could be so many different reasons why that would happen. But even things that seem horrible or we don't understand in that life, we have to also try and wrap our human brain around that decision would have been made out of love. And so again, you've got to think, okay, well, what have I learned from this? What have I gained from this experience? Rather than looking at it the opposite way of, being in that victim mentality, or what have I, look at everything I don't have because of this experience. Well, look at what you do have, get the lesson out of it, and your soul won't have to repeat that again. It may not have to repeat it the same way, it might repeat the same lesson in a different way, but either way, you don't want to have to repeat a class. Essentially, you just want to pass.
Yeah, you break a karmic cycle by remembering love, by remembering who you really are. And that can be through self-love, that can be through forgiveness, that can be through compassion. I love that. And so in your sessions, have you ever had somebody's higher self give information that then could be validated that they couldn't have known, whether it's about a person they were in a previous life, or something about the nature of the world, or just anything that client couldn't have known?
Oh, yeah, it's happened a lot. The first example that pops to mind, and I thought this was really, really fascinating. And this actually happened a few years ago. It happened early on in my career doing this. There was a client who had, again, she felt this pull toward a male friend of hers. Now, they weren't romantic or anything like that, but it was just this karmic connection, or this soul connection that she felt. And one of the things she wanted to know was why. She just wanted to know the reason behind it. It turns out her higher self actually brought her to a past life where they were married. He was, from memory, I think he might have only been in his early 30s, or he was young, and he died of a heart attack. And she spent the rest of that life absolutely heartbroken. And that in itself, explained to her why she felt this pull towards him, because she was like, well, obviously on that soul level, she missed him, she longed for him, But the really interesting part is she told him about, what the past life. She contacted me about a week later, and she was mind blown. She said, I told him about the past life together. And then he confessed to me that, I don't know how long prior, maybe a year or maybe more beforehand, that he himself had a past life regression with someone, and he had seen the same past life.
Oh my gosh.
He had seen that they were together, and he had died having a heart attack at a young age. And that gave me chills. And she flipped. She was like, what are the chances? And he never said anything to her, because I think he was like, might seem a bit weird, or I don't want to say anything. So it was when she told him, he was, apparently he flipped out. He was like, oh my gosh, you won't believe this. And he told her, he said, so, things like that can happen too. That's probably the only one that springs to mind in terms of actually having that validated, I suppose, from the other party, which, I remember that happening very early on in my career. So that's really stuck with me, that one.
Wow. When you said he got the same message, I just got full chills too. I think that's so amazing. So for people who get that answer to the why, or they get information that can help them progress, or they just take in what their higher self wanted them to get from the session, then how can you move forward? Say you get the answer then how do you actually integrate that? How do you look at that friend and not be like, wait, you are my husband? How can you just take the message from it and then move forward in a higher consciousness way?
Yeah, good question. It really depends on what the message is. So, I mean, for myself, a personal example was I had a session once where I was the client. Actually, this is before I became a practitioner. I, at that point, didn't even know I wanted to become a practitioner. And I saw a past life where I was not a very nice person. I was quite a horrible person as merchant on this ship. But there was this person there who, I can't actually, this is how bad I am with my memory with sessions, even though it was my own, I can't quite remember all the details, but I do remember there was someone in that life that in this current life, I had a massive, massive falling out with. And I never understood the falling out with this person. It just happened in the most bizarre circumstances where I didn't do anything to this person. All of a sudden they just turned on me and tried to turn all my friends and some of my family onto. It was a really bizarre, almost surreal moment of what's going on? What reality have I stepped in? This is really weird. And anyway, so that took a long time for me to, I suppose that whole experience really damaged me in a way that I wasn't progressing in my life as I should. That was holding me back. That whole hurt, that whole what have I done, and then everything was sort of crumbling around me. I mean, even my work, because there was people connected with my work involved. So home wasn't safe, work wasn't safe, my world was falling apart. And anyway, I had this session and this person was in that past life. And for the life of me, I can't remember the context even of it. But all I remember is once I realized that the behavior of that person and what they had done to me, I actually hadn't done anything in this life, and I think that's what was holding me back, thinking to myself constantly, what have I done? What do I do to deserve this? And you're always looking for that answer. And I realized that, well, there is no answer, as in I hadn't done anything. It was essentially replaying out. It was almost like a role reversal, replaying out of what had happened in a past life. And it was really amazing. And it's not something that well, for me anyway, it wasn't something that it was just, oh yeah, bang, from now I'm changed. It wasn't like that. It was a realization, and without me even knowing it, looking back, I still remember it was maybe 5 or 6 months after the session. I was driving along one day and I just had that, a download of, you get the little epiphany that drops in. And all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, I've done a lot in the last 5 or 6 months, last few months. And then it was like the second epiphany dropped in and I was thinking, my gosh, it's ever since I had that session. Because that information, or what was holding me back, what I was replaying over and over and over again in my head, was no longer there. So it's just amazing when sometimes just understanding why and being able to then release that allows you to then just do whatever it is you need to actually be doing here, as opposed to something holding you back. Does that make sense? Sounds a bit convoluted.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I think, just when you're not having things hold you back, and it doesn't matter what that could be, whether it's knowing patterns or knowing what relationships are or knowing connections, if we're replaying something in our mind, constantly wondering what something is, and I think sometimes I call it our human brain, it just needs to know why sometimes and have an understanding, and then it go, okay, yep, I understand why I'm happy with that. And then, yeah, it's like someone just releases that chain and you're able to move forward. But like I said, it's not like overnight you just, all of a sudden you're kicking goals, but of course it's a progressive thing. Yeah, it's interesting how that works.
Yeah, I think our human mind wants to make everything about us, and evidence of our failures, evidence of our shortcoming, evidence of how we're not enough. And as soon as we get the actual answer, we can release. I call it the inner villain voice, like that little voice that's always saying mean things, and it never goes away. Only our relationship to it can change, and how much we listen to it, how much we trust it. And so it's like, no, inner villain voice, I'm not a confrontational person that isn't trustworthy. It's actually because this is a karmic cycle that I'm breaking through love and self-awareness now with this work. And so say you uncover a soul contract or something that is really difficult in a session. And again, I understand that this is led by our higher self. So I feel like everything is going to be perfectly placed at the perfect time for our conscious understanding. But say you're made aware of like a soul contract or a karmic lesson, and I know love is the way to break it. But is there anything else that you can either advise people or concrete things to move forward in that new cycle, in that more loving way, or to consciously say, I no longer want to participate in this karmic contract with this person?
Yeah, definitely. You can break a contract. So, you can break the contract either by learning the lesson and moving on from it, leaving it behind. The other thing you can also do is, you don't actually have to be with the person. So let's say a situation where someone has done wrong by you or something like that, and it really comes down to forgiveness. So forgiveness, because forgiving, people say, oh, how can I forgive them? They did this to me, or how can I, but the forgiveness is not about the other person. If the other person is someone you don't even have contact with anymore, or they're someone who you think couldn't care less about you, do you think they're going to care if you forgive them or not? They don't care. It doesn't actually affect them. The forgiveness is forgiving them only benefits yourself, because that will release you, giving that forgiveness and truly forgiving them. When I think about the person who did wrong by me, there's no emotion attached to that anymore. I forgive them, whether they did it knowingly, intentionally, whether there was a karmic play of the play that they were playing out with me, whatever it may be, I forgive them. It has no impact on me now. And that's what's enabled me to move forward. So yeah, it's love. It's also forgiveness. And that can be the hardest thing for people to do as well, is to forgive someone that they feel is not worthy of that forgiveness, but also they may think they're not worthy of it, but on a soul level, like who that person truly is, when you go back to that place out of this 3D world, they are deserving. There's no bad souls. They're all full of love. It's a character here that they're playing. Like, you have to forgive that soul, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so beautifully said. And the image I got as you were speaking was that when we can forgive, we're basically filtering the poison out of our own well. Because this anger, this rage, this hate, this victim consciousness is just poisoning us. The other person might not even be aware of our anger, just like they're not aware of our forgiveness. So it's about coming back to that state of equilibrium, and that's true personal power and self-love. And it's not going to happen overnight, and there might be some cords to detangle, and it's deep, deep work, but it's ultimately such a powerful way to break that karmic cycle. Because in my readings, I've seen some like karmic relationships where say it's like somebody's ex-husband, but everything they're still doing in their life is to spite that person or comparing people to that person. It's like that person is living rent-free in their life, in their head, in their actions, and they're still playing out that karmic cycle with that person. So I think forgiveness is the true form of cord cutting in this life. Without forgiveness, there will never be cord cutting.
Yeah, you never get off that wheel. I get this visual of a mouse on a wheel just going around and around, and if you don't jump off and take the cheese and just let that stay on that wheel, you're never going to get off, and it only impacts you.
Absolutely. And I'm curious to know what your opinion is. This is going to be kind of an abstract question, so if we want to skip past it, that's totally fine. But if we're all here to play out different roles and experience duality, do you ever believe there can be a reality for planet Earth that is all love, higher consciousness, and everybody evolved? Or is there just a fundamental need for Earth to be a place where duality can be experienced? And so, quote unquote, evil, I don't even like that word, but fearful consciousness, wounded consciousness will always have to exist?
I think, Earth itself is, from my experience and, everything that I've also read and learned over the years, is that Earth is the densest place to be. So You know, it's heavy here. We have all these emotions that don't exist anywhere else, right? It's not just a school. It's like the hardest school. If your soul decides to come here, you know, it's quite brave. You know, there's a lot going on here.
PhD program.
That's it. And it's like the accelerated version. It's, you know, it's like them saying, okay, this would normally take you, you know, 6 years to do. You're going to do it in 3 months. So, you know, it's like we're really going to push you. But whether, you know, an earth can exist that is all love. So when you were saying that, you know, I was thinking of the, you know, what they talk about, the new earth, going to the new earth where it's all love and everything like that. And I think a lot of people think the new earth is a physical place. Like it's, the earth's going to change or it's going to split or there's a different earth. And that's not the case. I mean, new earth, it's a state of mind. It's your own level of consciousness. You can live on earth in that new earth mentality with that new earth level of consciousness. You know, there's people already doing it. You know, you yourself might already be doing it. You know, it's really just about who you are as a person, how you present to the world. You know, regardless of what's going on around you. I mean, you know, there's horrible things going on in the world, but they may not be part of your world, if that makes sense. You know, the world's a big place. So can it exist? It can, but it's not a physical place. It's more that state of being. It's internal to get there. And, you know, a lot of people will notice, if they haven't already, you know, if they are on their way there, people will naturally almost exit their lives that aren't on that same journey. And these are people that for no reason other than, you know, you just think, oh yeah, I haven't spoken to that person for 3 years, 5 years, and there's been no full, you know, people that just sort of drift out of your life for no real apparent reason. You just don't resonate with them anymore. These are people probably not on that same journey. For example, people talk about, oh, you know, going to the new earth, or people, you know, will these people follow me to the new earth? It's not like an apocalypse, you know, people are going to be left behind and we're all sort of taken off in spaceships, although that would be cool. But it's more about having that separation from people, as in they're still alive, they're still there. You can still pick up the phone and call them, but it's almost as if you won't want to, or there'll be that part of you that's like, no, I don't really, even though you don't dislike them, you just don't want to connect with them because they're just not on that same journey. They're not resonating with you anymore. So it's a bit hard to wrap our heads around. So you could have multiple earths coexisting the same physical reality. You'll still see the people, but it's like they're non-playable characters. They're people walking around. You don't have anything to do with them. They're not really part of your world as such. They're around. They're scenery. You know, people you walk past in the shops or whatever. You know, not everyone's part of everyone's world, if that makes sense. You know. Sort of hard to put our human words onto it because here we are a very physical 3D world, but when you're not in the 3D, when you are in consciousness, you can see that everything is connected and everything's happening at once, and it's all this beautiful intersection of just everything going on. And so it's essentially that, but we can only really perceive it in this reality as a physical existence.
I feel that deeply myself lately, like as I kind of continue down my healing journey and my clearing journey and my psychic development journey, there are just certain people that don't resonate with me anymore. And for some of them, it's because I won't allow myself to be treated badly in a way that I used to before my healing journey. And for some of them, just like you said, it's this not dramatic thing, but where I would have called them in the past and I just don't feel like it anymore. And it's almost this like schism of consciousness where certain people are going to that quote unquote new earth and other people are sort of staying in old trapped wounded narratives. And I'm very sure that the people listening to this are the people on their healing journey who are basically just reclaiming higher love and empowerment. And so I think that's really beautiful. And it also really goes hand in hand with Pluto and Aquarius, which is sort of a complete death and rebirth when it comes to the communities that we're in, the friendships that we have, the way we express ourselves online or with technology. It's all getting completely transformed.
Oh, interesting, actually. The Pluto and Aquarius, has that recently changed, has it? I don't follow this. I know Pluto takes like, what is it, 200 something years to, is it?
Yeah, I want to say, is it 263 years, I think, to go all the way around?
Oh, it's a long time.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact timeline, but as of, I think, 2 days ago, as of this recording, it moved back into the final degree of Capricorn, which is crazy because it's going to stay in Capricorn through November 18th, my birthday. And that is going to be like the US's final chapter of its Pluto return, because our natal Pluto is in Capricorn right during this like historic election. So it's a really intense time. And then after November 18th, it will be in Aquarius solidly for like the next few decades or something. I don't know the exact timeline on that.
Yeah, interesting. There you go.
Yeah, so really interesting. The last question I want to ask is this QHHT work safe to do? Like, I know there's so many things on YouTube and at-home hypnosis or guided meditations. And what is your point of view on that?
As opposed to whether you could do it on your own, or is that what you mean? Like,
yeah, like, is it safe to try at home, or is it best to do with a practitioner?
you couldn't do it on your own. There's no way you could do it on your own, because the whole process from start to finish, I mean, really, it's not just the regression. It's also the pre-talk, where we do a lot of work with the client. I mean, even just people talking about their lives can be healing in itself, and that really helps also prepare them for the regression. And then we do the regression, and if you're trying to do it yourself, you're not going to have a lot of success, because whilst the regression is happening, you know, as a practitioner, we are asking you what's happening. You're relaying it to us. We're asking questions based on that. We're asking you to, we don't direct you exactly where to go, but, we'll ask them to go to another scene of that life, whatever that may be. We'll ask them very open questions, which then allows them to unpack the story and get more information and get more clues. You can't do that to yourself while you're under. You can't ask yourself questions based on the information you're getting. I mean, you can, but it's going to bring your level of consciousness up rather than keeping you down where you can actually, because the part of your brain that would have to think about the question that it gave and ask the question, that's the part of the brain that needs to recede during the session. You know what I mean? So it'll be very, very difficult. I mean, a client is with a practitioner for at least probably 4 to 6 hours from start to finish, if not more. So when I say it's a long day, it's not really long because it goes so quickly. But yeah, it's a long process, and you couldn't really do it yourself at all.
How can the listeners find a certified QHHT practitioner, and does it have to be done in person, or could they work with you online?
Yeah, so QHHT, it does have to be done in person. I know with that particular method, there are other methods of quantum healing hypnosis that can be done online. There's a method I do which is called quantum healing, which is done online, which is not QHHT, but it's very similar in the sense that it's the pre-talk, you have an experience, you tap into the higher self and things like that. But yeah, the QHHT method specifically can only be done online. But to find a practitioner, there's the QHHTofficial.com, I think is their URL. That's the official QHHT website. So practitioners are on there. So there's a page on there called Find a Practitioner, and you can search by country, state, suburb, like there'd be thousands across the world. And yeah, that's probably the place to go to find them, is that QHHT official directory there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that resource and for sharing your wisdom. It was such an amazing hour to share together. I really loved picking your brain on all of these things. So where can our community find you and connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram as QHHT.Australia. My website is also just QHHTaustralia.com.au. But yeah, they're probably the two places to find me, where I'm sort of mostly hanging out.
Amazing. Well, thank you so, so much for everything. And I know that our people are going to reach out to you and really enjoy this talk. Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, my beautiful hummingbirds. This is the part of the podcast where I sit with Spirit and give the messages coming through from our angels, ancestors, and guides for the collective. Keep in mind that a lot of people listen to this podcast, so please take the messages that resonate with you and share the messages that you don't if you have an idea of who they might be for. So usually I start with the angel messages, but this week I actually want to get right into the past loved one coming through because her energy felt very urgent and she feels very close to me, and I don't want to wait for 10-15 minutes while I'm giving the other messages to bring her through. So I did have a female past loved one stepping in, and immediately I was overwhelmed by a sense of tension with her. Like, I felt like her life was a struggle. I feel like she was not the easiest person to be around. I feel a lot of pain with her emotionally, mentally, physically. I just feel like she was not only her own worst enemy, but also prey to just a lot of different circumstances in life that led her to where she was. And I get this energy from her of smoking, and I kind of have like pain in my gums, and I feel like there's something there with like her teeth and her gums, her mouth, that would have been painful. And then I was also hearing the word nurse, so I feel like she either worked in healthcare or was a nurse, or there's some connection with a nurse with her or with the person listening who the message is for. I also was hearing a M name, and that could be related to you or her. Could be her name started with an M, or it could be your name who the message is for starts with an M. And then I also heard the name Lynn. And then the other thing that came through was that there was a really hard time with communication with her, that she wasn't the easiest person to communicate with, and that there was a lot of pain between you and her and your relationship. And I even feel like at one point you were no contact, and that you might have been no contact when she passed. It feels like there was a lot of pain there between the two of you. And she was stepping in with her father in spirit, and her father in spirit and her were showing me that this was the root of a lot of pain, that they had a painful dynamic, that there was some wounding between them, and that a lot of the ancestral pain kind of came from him to her to you. And then she was showing me an interesting image of a daisy with half of its petals and her only focusing on the half of the petals that were gone. And it gave me this feeling that no matter what you did, no matter how you tried to show up for her, no matter what life gave her, she would only focus on what was missing, what wasn't right, what wasn't good enough, and that it caused a lot of really, really deep wounds between the two of you. So her message today is a deep apology to you. As I'm talking, I feel so much heaviness on my heart, and I feel a really hard time breathing. And I feel like she would have either had some sort of heart attack or something with her chest and lungs, something with this heart area, because I'm really struggling to even catch my breath right now. And her message is, it was never about you. The way I treated you was always about me and my own wounds and my inability to see outside of my own victimhood. And I'm so sorry. It was never about you. And the message here continues to say, I want you to open your heart to love. I know that the damage that I have done, and this does feel like a mother figure, I know that the damage that I have done makes you want to stay safe and small and hidden, and it makes it really hard to believe in true love and to be that vulnerable. And I know that I've caused a lot of pain, and I'm so sorry, but let it end with you. And I think that it's such a beautiful synchronicity with the message from the episode about how karmic cycles of pain are broken through love. And so the message here is, let yourself be open to deeper love. And not only that, but know you are deserving of it. And I just got shown this image of like a little girl huddled in a little huddle. And I feel like there's something here with your inner child feeling so scared and so wounded from her. And that there's just a big apology there. And I know that you might have been no contact or didn't get to say goodbye at the end. But she shows me sending butterflies. And I get the feeling that it's a constant symbol that she can change and grow and have new conscious awareness on the other side. So, deep one today. It felt really urgent. And I just love coming back to that message of the cycle breaks through love. So powerful. So I'm going to circle back now. So I loved this past life episode so much. And We might have to have Nadia on again because there's so much more to say about past life stuff, and certainly a lot has come through in my readings. But taking a complete 180 from that mediumship message is a couple of notes that I want to say about past life information. So the first is that how we feel so driven in our heart to be of service in this life can be directly correlated to who we were or who we were not in a past life. And so I have had some past lives. Well, I guess I'll tell this story really briefly, that I have seen a couple glimpses into a past life where I was a Viking man and I was not a good guy. Let's just say that. I was especially awful to my wife, and I was especially awful to women, and I only prioritized my sons. And it's really interesting to me because in this life, and I truly believe that the past lives that were shown are for our specific healing in this life, because there's too many lives to even conceptualize. That being said, in this life, I'm obviously a woman, and I was in an abusive relationship from the point of view of a woman. And it was abusive on every level, and I gave my power away. And a big passion of mine in this lifetime is remembrance and service, especially to women, of course to everybody, but I live the female experience, and so that's who I feel really drawn to help serve and wake up, especially in the confines of a patriarchal society. And so I think it's so interesting, that message of that, what really lights us up, what we're motivated to do, how we want to be of service in this life could be a direct reflection of who we were or who we were not in a past life. The other suggestion that I wanted to give about past life stuff is that there are a lot of oracle card decks out there and tarot card decks out there that have ties to other timelines. Like, for example, I have a deck over here. It's like the Wisdom of Avalon deck. And that's, Guinevere and the Lady of the Lake and Merlin and all of these things, but it's from a different time period. It's from a different location. It's from a different era. And so there might be different decks that speak to you, and that might not be an accident. Well, I don't believe in accidents. So if you feel super drawn to like a certain period or a certain location or a certain culture, maybe explore a divining tool that is connected to them in respect to closed practices and, the culture and what they have to say about it. But I think an oracle card deck with those themes could be a really beautiful way to explore that. I also do have a message about karmic relationships. We touched on it a little bit in the episode, and I do know that in my readings I see all the time, like, okay, I'm going to meet up with you here at this point to help wake you up. You help wake me up. But sometimes, even if we are drawn to a past life connection and it feels so intense and it's in a romantic way, sometimes we think, well, this is karmic. That means we have to be together. And it's so hard to give this person up because there's just this je ne sais quoi that's bringing us together and together and together. But the message I've gotten time and time again in readings where, say, for example, there's a really difficult marriage and on both sides, and two coworkers realize, oh my gosh, this is everything I wish I had in my marriage, but it's with this person. And it feels very karmic and like we've known each other before and I've never felt this way, but we can never be together because we're both married. And what I say to that is, and not even what I say, but what I've heard about that from our angels and guides, is that this is by design. If you are woken up, but there are logistical reasons why the two of you, after you've reconnected and feel this flame, can't be together, that is by design. Sometimes the purpose is not marriage and kids, like we've been conditioned to believe. Sometimes the purpose is not happily ever after together. Sometimes the purpose is just a jolt to the system, a shock to the system that's powerful enough to wake you up, to help you remember, and to help you make a new choice. And often what I see with those connections and hear with those connections is that that level of electricity, sameness, and karmic connection wouldn't be sustainable in the long run anyway. And that there are partners out there that are more of a match for sustainability, building on different strengths, etc., but that the whole point of this karmic reconnection is for that wake up. So if you meet somebody and you feel this karmic connection, sometimes that is the whole point, is just to remember who you are. Going into the messages I got for the week from our angels, the very first thing I felt was solar plexus chakra upgrades. The solar plexus is in the stomach, and it's tied to stories of self, identity, personal power, inner child healing, and life purpose and confidence. And I feel all of this sort of tightness on the solar plexus. And the message that I got is that the things that are out of alignment with our authentic self, with our power, and with our purpose are going to be made so clear to us. It is going to feel like nails on a chalkboard to sustain them. It is going to be harder and harder to live in this inauthentic way, either in a living situation or a job or in a relationship, in a friendship. It's like these things are just going to be, as we are elevating and stripping back the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are to actually reveal the truth inside, everything that is in congruence with those outdated stories is going to feel harder and harder to drag along with us. And so there is this feeling here of like, get the message. That heaviness is the message. That feeling of, oh, I really don't want to keep doing this is a message. Start to feel into, start to strategize, start to trust what wants to take its place and how you can let that go. I also feel a lot of crown chakra blocks around the collective, which is very common, so I don't always even mention it, but it feels extra heightened and important to mention right now. A lot of overthinking, a lot of second guessing, a lot of questioning, a lot of feeling around through the dark, not sure what's going to happen, not sure how to move forward. And it feels like that pressure cooker sensation. It feels like a lot of tests and lessons and intensity and one thing after another. And it's intense right now. The energy feels very, very, very intense. It feels like we're in this moment where it's so transformative and it's calling for so much change, not even calling, but demanding so much change. And part of that is walking our way through the darkness of the unknown, which I believe it's episode 122. I do a whole segment on darkness. Check that out to reframe what darkness really means. And so what I saw with that sort of overthinking, shadowy, unknown place was our angels on the outside cheering us on. And this darkness is the chrysalis. This darkness is the womb space with the potential for all creation. And our perception is like darkness, unsure, have to think our way out of things, have to strategize, have to cling on to control. But on the outside of that, our angels are like, yeah, we're cheering you on. And you don't realize that this darkness you're in is actually where you're about to hatch and emerge from. We see the bigger picture from outside of the chrysalis, and we're cheering on your bravery, your growth. And what they're saying now is we're even cheering on your mistakes, because mistakes are not a bad thing. Mistakes are okay because at least you're creating momentum for your angels to work with. So there truly are no mistakes because we can learn with them. Just keep moving forward in alignment with your highest truth, power, and self-love, and everything else will course correct to support you. I also got this feeling that writing was really important right now. They showed me like a handwriting, and if you're a writer, then okay, that's going to make sense immediately. If you're not a writer, I feel like it's an important time for journaling, self-reflection, and sort of goes hand in hand with that crown chakra block of getting it out of your head, out of the cerebral, and into the physical for greater clarity. And just, this is a great time to take up journaling. And you can even ask like your higher self or your angels or your guides, what do you want me to know? What's the truth about this situation? And just free write and see what comes through. And then I saw the planet Saturn. Saturn is the planet of tests, of lessons. Interestingly enough, Saturn is karma, and where you have Saturn in your chart shows the house that it's in, shows the area that you'll be tested and where a lot of the lessons are coming from, and the sign that it's in shows what you have mastered, which archetype you have really gotten into the trenches with in past lifetimes. So Saturn rules time. And so it feels like we're in a moment where the brakes might feel pumped. It might feel energetically clunky. There might be a lot of tests and lessons. And it feels like the themes coming up right now, which this goes hand in hand with the writing, are so important to observe and witness because there are a lot of karmic soul themes and lessons coming up right now. And pay attention to the patterns. Pay attention to what is the earliest time I can remember this feeling? Did I ever observe this pattern in a family member? Have I ever made this choice from this place before? And how did it work out in the past? Just start to get curious, start to observe the patterns, and start to look at the tests that are coming up time and time again. And when Saturn is involved, there's often lessons around self-worth, maturity, discipline, and responsibility. So those are some key words with Saturn. And I do feel intuitively that some people are at this place of deciding, should I have kids or not? And I just want to call that out because it feels like a time to be really radically honest with yourself about what you really feel and to tune into, is this really what's on my heart? Do I feel societal pressure? What is the truth of this situation? And again, maybe go back to that channeled writing if this is you and this is your message. But the beautiful thing about Saturn is that it always leaves a reward. When you make a healed, wise new choice, when you pass the test or you learn the lesson, Saturn leaves a reward for your hard work. And that is a message I keep seeing time and time again, is this feeling of us being in the dark, us being confused, us grasping for answers and control. And on the other side of that, our angels cheering us on and a timeline of higher love and joy. And so I do believe that there is going to be a reward for how intense not only this year, but the last few years have been astrologically. It's like, you know, I talk about astrology on here, and it's not just a week-to-week message. It's a overarching message. Some planets take decades to make a whole rotation around the sun. And so have patience. We've been in this prolonged period of so much growth and transformation. So just be kind to yourself. And the last message that I want to share, which I love this so much when our angel showed me this, I got the image of a dandelion and all of its little tendrils being blown off into the wind. And the message that I got here is that it's our job to live life so fully, authentically, vibrantly. And that act is what blows the tendrils of the dandelion. And it's spirit's job to direct the tendrils, to direct the winds that shape where the tendrils go, and to find a place for the tendrils to land. And it's a beautiful co-creation. You could never blow the tendrils off of a dandelion and aim for something. And that's almost a similar energy to when we try to hold the reins of control so tightly over our life. And there's this permission slip with this sort of chaotic, intense energy of change that we've been navigating. Do your part of the energetic contract by blowing the tendrils into the wind. That can be aligned action. That's our healing work. That's our following our joy. That is being of service to the world around us. All of those acts create momentum and blows those wisps of dandelion tendrils. And then our angels and guides will control where they land and how they land and the timing in which they land. And that's the beautiful co-creation and dance that we do with them. And so that's what I'm going to leave you with, you guys. A lot of messages all over the place again this week, which makes me feel like there's going to be a lot going on. I never know exactly when these are going to come out, but the energy feels very layered. It feels like a lot of moving pieces at once. It feels like a time for deep ancestral healing, deep karmic healing, which I think the timing of this episode is so beautiful in the way it coincides with the messages. And just stay with that visual of how you blow your unique energetic frequency into the world through inspiration, joy, what you want to manifest, what excites you, and just being your authentic self. And let everything else fall to your angels and guides because they are cheering you on. They see something that we don't see yet. Well, they see a lot that we don't see yet. And so just as much as possible, keep the faith, Keep the faith through the up level. Much love, everyone, and have a beautiful week.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we will send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 166 5-star reviews.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are